is a wrong interpretation of reality. The interpretation of reality that says that because he committed this action of a reach, a thrust of the knife, that he is, in some sense, an evil person, isn't really true. There are many senses in which that action could be legitimized. An example of a horrific action that was legitimized was the example that I've continually been giving of Setha's brutal infanticide, the slaughter of her child. Right? It was legitimized within a particular context, right? So that you can't just describe the action just wholesale as being bad. The action in and of itself, whatever that action might be, action X, you cannot have a moral law that condemns action X wholesale. That condemns action X wholesale, right? You can't have a moral law that condemns it wholesale. Under all accounts, no matter what happens, under any circumstance, is it ever acceptable for someone to commit a reach, a grab, a thrust of the knife? Someone dies. You can't do that, ever. It's never good, it's always bad, it's always evil. Right? That belief is based on the assumption that all possible conceptual scenarios, all possible contexts have been incorporated into the law. But then you get the example of, well, what happens when somebody tries to break in my house and is going to kill my whole family? And this is the only way I can defend my family. Is it bad then? Oh, it's bad then. And well, what about the time when, and it's always bad. No matter what you say, no matter when you say it, it's always bad. But if they say, well, no, under that circumstance, it's not bad. You start to recognize, a 5-year-old can recognize this. You can start to recognize there's a lot of wiggle room. There's a lot of room for conceptual readjustment, reassessment, reconstruction. We really then recognize that the law is itself a product of social construction. As a graduate student, because I didn't have anything else to do with my time, I wrote a very, 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 very tiny book, which you can get for free, an ebook. It doesn't even really count as a book. It was more me just throwing out ideas before I had YouTube. Now I don't have to do that because I have YouTube. Thank God. But the idea is what I've classified as a politics of discrimination. Right? The political system is in bed with the social system. There's no way to get around it. Right? It's an impossibility to divorce social from political. Hence my video on socio-political. There are biases within our social system. In the US, in every social system. Those biases help to inform our political system. Thus, our political system becomes a receptacle for some of that bias. And what we need are individuals who are aware that this occurs, and at each point where there is an abuse of power, where there is a disregard for marginalized communities, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on, because we recognize this influence, we're more cognizant of those factors, those people, those communities, what have you. What Nietzsche's saying is that the moral law can't just explicitly state you can or you cannot do X. Because it assumes that all context-specific instances cannot be justified outside of the system. I don't care what the context is that you have. If you perform X, you are wrong. Right? If you perform an act of sex outside of marriage, it is condemnable. Under all circumstances. It's never a good thing to do that because it's just not. If you tell a lie, then it's wrong. Telling lies on any account is wrong. Your wife comes in, she says, hey, sweetie, how's my hair look? You've seen better days. You say, oh, it looks great, sweetie. When you really don't believe it, that's wrong, under all accounts. Right? Your child shows you something that's super mundane. Hey, daddy, look at this. I made this, thing that's really not that impressive. And you say, oh, it looks great. Did you do that all by yourself? We do it all the time. We do it all the time. We do it all the time. All right? We do it all the time. So what he's saying is that it's not a descriptive account. It's a prescriptive account. Recognize, morality, that your role within all things conceptual is to tell people what they should do. And you can do that. You shouldn't go. You shouldn't kill that guy when he comes into your house to rape your wife and kill your kids and slaughter you and, you know, kill your dog. You shouldn't kill that guy. Well, why shouldn't I kill it? It's not telling you that if you kill it, he's wrong. You shouldn't. Well, tell me why I shouldn't. But if you tell me why I shouldn't, then you're opening up an area of discourse. And I can either agree with that or I can disagree with that. Depending on how convincing your logic is, depending on how convincing your reasoning is, you would be crazy to think that people don't ascribe to that belief. The guy comes in your house, he's going to, you know, I mean, extreme, hardcore pacifist, right? I'm not going to kill that dude, you know. He's going to do what he's going to do. I'm going to try and plead with him. I'm going to try and reason with him. But I'm not going to do anything to inflict violence on or harm on another living thing. If that's what you believe, that's what you believe, right? So with respect to beliefs, Nietzsche's not really concerned with the individual belief of an individual believer, with the individual belief of an individual devotee. He's not concerned with that at all. What he's saying is with the system of beliefs, the system that organizes beliefs, in this case, an ethical system. Later lecture series, I'll talk about ideological systems which organize secular beliefs. But with respect to the organization of ethical beliefs, an ethical system is completely legitimized and justified in saying you shouldn't do it. An ethical system is wholly outside of its area of expertise. It is completely wrong for an ethical system to say that the act that you have performed is good or bad, because what does that mean to begin with, right? That's what Nietzsche says at the beginning. What is the counterfeiting aspect of morality? It pretends to know something, namely what is good and bad. What does it mean to say that it's good? What does it mean to say that it's bad? It doesn't mean anything, right? It means whoever is in a position to dictate what good is determines what good is. Whoever is in a position to dictate what bad is what bad is, right? And Nietzsche's saying this is a counterfeiting aspect of morality. Morality is duping people, at least this formulation of morality, this manifestation, this abuse of the moral ethic, is an assumption that there is a goodness in the world. There is an evil in the world. That there is this thing and it exists as stuff in the world, right? It's empirical, it's there. Nietzsche is not going to have any of that. Okay, so top of page 60 now. I'll erase this. Alright, new topic 2. This is historical progression as, oh, this is good, right? As a side. So historical progression as counterfeit. Here's what Nietzsche says. Nietzsche says, the belief in progress toward the ideal, which we discussed last section, is the only form in which a goal in history is thought of today. The goal of history is only conceptualized in this sort of historical progression towards perfection. That alone is genius, right? And I say explain. I don't want to explain it just yet. Okay, so it is genius. The belief in progression toward the ideal is the only form, not a form, the only form in which a goal in history is thought of today. I will explain. The idea is that there is a, as the title says, historical progression, a historical progression towards perfection. That history is advancing towards a perfect state. If you're not careful, you might look at nanotech, at biotech, at advances in physics, at advances in neurology and brain chemistry, advances in engineering, advances in even the social sciences. The very discovery, recognition of social construction is an enormous discovery. It's huge.